Hello, and welcome back to Christian Conversations with Crystal. I'm coming on tonight to provide you with another video. Hopefully, that will be beneficial to you and inspirational in some form or fashion. About 2+ weeks ago, I uploaded a video that was titled My Testimony Part 1. And in that previous video, I mentioned that I was going to be doing a series of videos, possibly 3 to 4, that would pretty much provide you with my testimony, my life's journey, um, you know, throughout the years up until where I am now, and how God has definitely been in the midst, and how He has been working and moving in many different aspects of my life. So tonight I'm coming back with part 2. Hope you enjoyed part 1. As I stated in part 1, God just laid on my heart to do this series because we all have a testimony, and we never know how our testimony or how our witness is going to bless or going to help someone else. So, you won't know unless you tell it. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do according to the will of God. So I think on the last video, I left off where I was kind of at a transitioning point in my life. I had gone to college where I was at NC State for about 4 years, and of course things did not go well. I was involved in a lot of sinful activities, things that weren't beneficial to me as far as my education was concerned, and so I didn't finish. So I wound up back in my hometown in a state of, just depression. I was ashamed. I was upset with myself for ending back up where I was, and just at a point of standstill. Didn't know how to proceed, how to move forward. Um, but God has a reason for everything, and He even had a purpose behind that occurring. But during that time, though, while I was at home, um, you know, God began to definitely start a conviction process in me, with slowly bringing me back to Him. And prior to me leaving NC State, I had um, sort of an experience, I would say. One night, I remember I was laying in my dorm room in my bed, and I'm pretty sure it was a night where my friends and I had gone clubbing or gone to a party or something, and but I was laying there, and I don't know if any of you out there have ever felt this, but I felt empty, and I was laying there, and I just was thinking about just everything that I was going through, and everything that I was doing, what I should have been doing, what I shouldn't have been doing, and it just was an emptiness, and I distinctly remember beginning to cry as I was laying in the bed. And of course I had a roommate, but I kind of was like, on my own side, and I just was crying, kind of silently, in my bed that night, um, because I had come to a place where my upbringing, where that word that had been instilled in me was starting to work. It was starting to do a work, and it was really tugging at me, and letting me know that this lifestyle that I was living, was not pleasing to God, and that it wasn't helping me at all. And so I just laid there kind of empty, crying, and I remember looking up at my dorm room ceiling, and it was like wooden beams. But when I looked up at them, and obviously up until this point hadn't even noticed this, but they actually all look like crosses. And that was a defining moment for me, because I really feel like that was, God letting me know that, even though you have strayed, even though, you're not living a life that is pleasing to me, or living a life according to my word, you can be redeemed. You can have another chance. There is something more than just what you're experiencing right now. And if I want to reference two scriptures tonight that would kind of tie into this this part of my testimony, one would be Hosea 14:4, and it says, "I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely, for mine anger is turned away from him." And then the second one is Jeremiah 24:7, and that one says, "And I will give them an heart to know me, that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart." So those two scriptures definitely relate to this turning point in my life, because they relate to backsliders, people who have backslid, who knew God and turned their back on him and went in a different direction. And that's where I was at that point. Uh, but God let me know that that wasn't, or that didn't have to be the end for me. That there was something else that could happen, that could provide just a better outcome and a better life for me. So kind of fast forward, like I said, in Tarboro, had that experience in Tarboro now, and kind of in this state of just staying still and just depression, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And like I said, God has a reason for everything, and he allows different things to happen for different reasons, to get us to a place where we need to be in him. So my sister had moved to Greensboro, and her husband, and she contacted me, and she was like, "I know you don't want to be in Tarboro necessarily." She said, "But you can come." And of course my daughter was with me. She said, "You can come and move in with us, but you have to go back to school and finish your degree." And of course I was all for it, because like I said, I felt like a failure at that point, because I had attended college, I didn't complete, I was back home with my mom and dad, and I just was not in a good space. And I wanted to get back into a better place. And I knew, of course, finishing my education was absolutely my goal. Even like I said in my first video, with me becoming a teenage mom, that was still my focus, was going to college and graduating from college and getting my degree. So, I thank God for him laying it on her heart to even offer me the opportunity to be able to come and stay with them, and putting that stipulation on it, but you have to get your degree, because that actually just motivated me even more to make it happen. So fast forward, myself and my daughter, we moved to Greensboro, living with my sister and her husband, which I thank God for them. And eventually, I started working. I was still going to school, but I moved out on my own, got my own apartment, and things were going really well. They were going really well. I was doing well in school. Of course, major differences this time from when I was at NC State. I had left all those so-called friends behind. I had left all those, party people that I used to deal with behind. And now it was just me and my daughter, so it shifted my focus, where I was more concerned about finishing my education and building a better life for her at this point. And let's go back to that word, so-called friends. It's, we as people in general, and then definitely young people, encounter those type of people on a regular basis. People who befriend you, people who you feel like has your back, will be with you through thick and thin, that are, thinking about your best interests. And I had to learn the hard way that, the only individual, the only entity that you can trust is Jesus Christ, because you can't put your trust in man, as the Bible says, and that means man and woman, but just in human beings in general. Because people are fickle, they change on you, they shift, they decide they want to do something totally different than what they started out doing. And you can't have that stability with man like you do with God. So it's nothing wrong with having acquaintances. It's nothing wrong with having people that you associate with, but just be mindful about that term friend, because everyone that is, portraying themselves to be your friend, is not what they are seeming to be. And some people have, alternate motives where they try to befriend you, and then they want to see you fall. They want to see you fail. They want to see, negative things happen to you. And so, just throughout life, I have just learned to just be mindful of people, to, as the Bible say, watch as well as pray, be mindful of people. And, one of the main things I have prayed for is discernment. God, let me know who I need to be associating with and who I don't. And it's not you or me or anybody else who takes that mindset on, being stuck up, or thinking that we're better than anybody else, or wanting to be so separated. But it's about you protecting, your well-being, you protecting your spiritual well-being, your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, your physical well-being. In some situations, you just can't associate and connect with any and everybody. And especially when you are a proclaiming Christian, you definitely can't connect and associate with any and everybody, because as the word says, what does light have to do with darkness? Light and darkness can't dwell in the same space. Good and evil can't dwell in the same space. So, that's something that you have to consider. But as I was saying, like I said, I was more focused, because those so-called friends, weren't around, weren't there to influence me to do this and do that. And don't get me wrong, they didn't force me to do anything, because I had a choice. I could have told them no, I could have stayed home, I could have done what I was supposed to do, but I chose to follow the crowd instead of being a leader at that time. But such is life. We all have gone through that, where we have to go through that phase of being that follower, trying to fit in, being influenced by other people, and you're going to have to suffer through some things in order to learn that I'm going to have to go against the grain. I'm going to have to be different, because that's what God expects of me. He expects his people to be different. He expects us to not be, cut run of the mill, cut from the same cloth as everyone else. Because, we are, as the Bible says, we are a peculiar people. We're just different. That's just all what it boils down to. And a lot of people don't understand it. But anyway, so doing well in Greensboro. And, like I said, you learn, you live and you learn about associations. And something that I have always struggled with, had a problem with, made terrible decisions on, was men. I don't mind being honest about it, because I know where God has brought me from. And I'm hoping with me discussing this that it's going to help somebody else. But just choosing just the wrong people, just the wrong relationships, allowing men to come in and just, completely dictate who I am as a person, come in and, because of who they are, I begin to shift and change who I am. And once again, going through life, making bad choices, experiencing, heartache and pain and trials and tribulations and hard situations, you live and you learn. that, especially when you are a Christian, um, you know, you got to stand for what God expects you to stand for. You got to do what God expects you to do. It's not about what man wants from you. It's about what God expects. And if we are going to please him, if we're going to serve him, if we're going to live a life according to his will, we have to be obedient to what he says and not what man says. So, like I said, just bad relationships, one bad relationship after another. Never in a situation, thank God, with men that were physically abusive or anything like that. But just relationships that really weren't what God wanted for me, weren't what God had for me. And as a young woman, and I'm pretty sure a lot of women and men in general, go through this phase of, you know, trying to figure out and find out, who I am first, and then you have to learn how to set boundaries, set boundaries of, what you will and what you won't do, and what you will and what you won't allow. And I just was not at that place in my life, at that place in Christ, where I was able to do that with men that I were dating. Um, and and I think a lot of it, goes back to that emptiness. That void was still there, even though, as a young teen I had given my life to Christ. I had become a backslider. And like I said, with that experience in my dorm room that night, God had begun that conviction process to let me know that, that I could turn back to him, that he was still there for me. But once again, wanting to live my life as I wanted to, wanting to make decisions that I wanted to make. Um, I had to continue to go through, some hard situations before I got to the full realization that God is in control. No matter what we do, no matter how it plays out, God is in control. And it's tiresome to try to fight against God. You can't outrun him. You can't outfight him. What he says is what it's gonna be, and with someone like me who I admittedly say was hard headed, was stiff necked, did not want to go the way God wanted me to go. And I can say that because I know some people out there in similar situations. It makes life harder for you because you are trying to buck up against what God has for you and what God says is gonna go, and you can't beat him. You can't. He is Alpha and Omega. He's Almighty. He's eternal. He's omnipotent. He's omnipresent. He knows everything. He controls everything. He orchestrates everything. You do not have the strength or the power to try to outrun or out control God. You can't do it. So ultimately you get to a point where you just give up, you're tired, you surrender, and you let God have his way. And God knows what it's gonna take to get us to that point. But anyway, so just, bad relationships. And like I said, I think a lot of it was me trying to fill that void that only Jesus Christ could fill. And I feel like that's something that we do, when we're in a place where, we're still, living that life where we want to do what we want to do and we don't want to surrender to God. We know it's something missing. We can feel it. We realize that it's something missing, but we're not ready to just adhere and surrender to him yet. So you're going to continue to make bad decisions. You're going to continue to make bad choices. You're going to continue to suffer negative consequences because you're not going the way that God is expecting you to go. So just relationships that, like I said, just that were not beneficial. May as well be honest, that were just beneath what God had for me. And as women, and this can go for men too, but I'm a woman, so I'm speaking to my women. As women, you have to learn, you have to get to know your worth, especially as a Christian woman. you know um you can't just accept anything. You can't take anything. You can't allow anything to happen. because we serve Jesus Christ. Okay, and that's saying something. And as a Christian woman, you can't take down, you can't make exceptions. If this is what God has ordained for your life, if you know right from wrong, if you know that this is how you're supposed to be living according to God's word, don't allow anybody to change your mind or to influence you to do anything different. Because ultimately, in the end, that same person that you made these sacrifices for, that same person that you shifted and changed your life for, may not even be there. So what was the point? So it's best for us to please God versus pleasing man. And then if it is meant for you to have a mate or to have a spouse, let God send that person to you. And I'll get to that later. But yeah, just accepting less, what was beneath what God had for me. And like I said, as women, sometimes we do that because we just want companionship. We just want to say, hey, I got a man. Hey, I got a boyfriend. But once again, in the end, what is it worth? What really is, how is it really benefiting you? If it's not the person that God has for you. So really, you just wasting time and wasting energy, and a lot of times wasting money for no reason. And we'll get to that later too. So, continued my time in Greensboro, did really well in school, graduated, thanks be to God, with honors from UNCG. And, was up there for a little bit, but then came back to Tarboro, because I think my sister had they were moving back to Tarboro around that time. And just started my journey from there as a newly graduated professional. So once again, just meeting different people, interacting, having relationships with different men, but still not where God wanted me to be, not in a situation that God wanted me to be in. So, one thing about God, he's a God of movement. Even when we think he's still, he's moving. He's orchestrating things behind the scene. And I just really feel like, God will allow us to go our own way, for some time, because he's setting some things up. He's preparing some things. And he knows, like I said, what it's going to take to get us to a place where we know that we can't do anything without him. Where we have to surrender to him. So, I always had, like I said, grew up in the church, always went to church, and primarily was attending my mom's church. And, but then I also had, like I said, my aunt who had a church as well. And I just thank God for connecting with that ministry, which is the ministry that I am with now, Lakeside Community Worship Center. Praise be to God. I'm glad that God sent me that way. And I would never forget attending there, just visiting one Sunday, had not joined or anything at that point. And my pastor did an altar call. And, and she was kind of, prophetically speaking about, it was, people in the audience that God had ordained and that he had a call on your life and these things. And these were all things that I already knew. But at that point, once again, hard-headed, stiff-necked, didn't want to, move according to God's plan for my life, because I was young and just wanted to do what I want to do. But one thing about, God, he's spirit. And just when she was speaking, I could just feel him kind of moving all over me. And like, it was a situation where I didn't even realize it, but I had gotten up and went up to the altar. Like, it was like 1 minute I was sitting in my chair and the next minute I was standing there. That's how powerful God is. So I went up there and, she kind of went through and talked to everyone who decided to come up. And, I let her know that I wanted to rededicate my life to Christ. And so that started a new journey as far as my salvation is concerned. And I decided to join with that particular church. That became my church home. I was baptized again. I had been baptized the first time I proclaimed salvation, but I wanted to be baptized anew. So I was baptized again and became a member and just started sitting on under the leadership and the word there. And let me just say that's the best decision that I could have ever made, because being a part of that ministry, I have gotten the word consistently, just not watered down, not sugar coated. I have gotten the word, and I thank God for my leaders for providing us the word in season and out of season. No matter what the situation was, they allowed God to use them to provide the people with His word, and I thank God for them, because that has helped me to grow as a Christian, and I do believe it has helped me to, realize and fully understand the call that God has on my life, because I was sitting under that leadership. And so I thank God for that. But, we're human. And like I said, I have just always been somebody who was very strong-willed and stubborn and wanted to do it my way. So even though I had come to that place where I rededicated my life to Christ and I was under this great ministry, I still was still sitting on the fence. I still had, one foot in, and I'm sure many of you out there have gone through that, where it's like, God, I want to serve you. I want to do what is right. I want to live a life that's pleasing to you. But then that other foot is still in the world, where it's like, but God, I want to hang out. I want a boyfriend. I want to fornicate. I want to do this. I want to do that. And God says, no, you can't have it both ways. But it took me some time. It took me some time and some learning experiences to finally realize that, this isn't Burger King. You can't have it your way. It's God's way or it's no way. So had to go through some things to get to that point. But I thank God for everything that I went through, because that's allowed me to sit here and talk to you tonight and provide you with these, hopefully these words of wisdom, to prevent somebody from having to go through what I went through. But so even sitting under that great leadership, ministry, everything, I still had an issue with just choosing the wrong men and just connecting myself with men that were not followers of Christ like I was. And the Bible talks about being unequally yoked. I mean, and that's not even just in relationships. That's just in friendships and associations. Just don't be unequally yoked with people who are not in the same realm as you concerning their salvation or concerning their spirituality. Because if you are, there is a chance that they are going to influence you to backslid. They're going to influence you to do things that are not pleasing to God. And, we don't ever want to be in that situation where we're not pleasing to God, because, I'm more so concerned about what God is going to do versus what man is going to do. Because I know God can do a whole lot more than man can. But just, just still trying to live my life the way I wanted to, wanting to live and make the decisions of my own, but still wanted to be blessed by God, to, have a good relationship with God. But you can't, like I said, you can't have it both ways. So once again, relationships here and there, but God turned up the heat some, because even with these relationships that I was getting into, after some time, I would start feeling convicted. It was getting to the point now where, I was being convicted, because I knew I wasn't really supposed to be with this person, because this person wasn't saved. They weren't thinking about God. They weren't even concerned about salvation at that time. And here I am connecting with this person, being intimate with this person, fornicating, whatever. And God wasn't pleased with it. He wasn't pleased with my lifestyle. And God will let you know when He's not pleased with your lifestyle. Believe me, He will. He'll allow things to happen. He'll allow situations to arise in your life to kind of, pop that light bulb on and let you know, okay, it's time to make a change. It's time for you to stop this behavior. It's time for you to, like the scripture said, turn back to me, return to me, because this is not the path that you are supposed to be on. This is not the destiny that I have in store for you. And so just those relationships, and just starting to be convicted in those relationships. And and one thing I can tell people concerning relationships, when you are a Christian and when you are saved, like I mentioned earlier, you have to set boundaries and set expectations from the beginning. And once again, still young, still trying to figure myself out, my life out, still growing in the Lord. I didn't understand the importance of that, because when you meet a person, an individual that potentially may become, a significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, you got to let them know that I'm a child of the King from the beginning. You got to let them know that, okay, here's what I will do and here's what I won't do. You got to let them know that these are my expectations according to my Father's will. Because if you don't set those boundaries and set those expectations early on, it's gonna be haywire. It's gonna be chaotic. It's gonna be you involved and you doing things that you're gonna be convicted by, because they're not gonna be pleasing to God. And so I hadn't learned that at that point. So just starting to date guys, and knowing I was saved, knowing that God had a calling on my life, but not setting that boundary and that expectation at the beginning. And ladies, I'm gonna tell you like this, and this could go for my guys too, but it's one thing that you can say, okay, at the beginning of a courtship or relationship, that's gonna really tell the tale, as my mom has said in the past, about who this man is, even if he's claiming salvation. If at the beginning of y'all talking or y'all dating or whatnot, you let him know that you are celibate, okay, and that you are abstaining from sex, if he stays, then he may be, and I still say maybe, because you still got to be mindful, he may be a man of God, or staying true to what he said he is. But if he goes, then you already know what the deal is. I say this, I tell my 22-year-old daughter this. That's what's gonna make the decision. When you let that person know that you are not gonna be fornicating, that's gonna show their true colors. Because we live in a world where sex is just rules. It's everywhere. It's on your TV, it's on your phones, it's in magazines, it's in advertisements. When they say sex sells, it does. And we live in a world where premarital sex is promoted, where it's like, if you're not having sex, then what are you doing? Like, are you crazy? Like, how are you even making it? But see, that's a trick of the enemy, because sex is not a need, it's a want. And I used to be in that mindset of that I'm single, I can date, why wouldn't I have sex? But when you give your life to Christ and you're seriously committed to him, then premarital sex, fornication, is not an option. It's no exceptions. It's no exceptions. Like, you can't, it's no clauses, it's no loopholes, it's no fine print, it's no exceptions. You're not supposed to do it. That's just all what it boils down to. And I feel like people try to provide a lot of exceptions for it in this day and age. But just like, I had to sacrifice, or and I had to make the decision that, okay, I understand, God, that I'm not supposed to do this. That's what anybody else is going to have to do if they are serious about serving Jesus Christ, because God has standards. He has standards for his people, and and you have to meet them. I mean, that's just it. Like, I had to get to that point where I recognize that, whatever God says, that's what goes. You can't negotiate with God. You can't sit down like you do with your friends and say, well, God, is it okay if I? No. If he said don't do it, then he means don't do it. If he says do it, then he means do it. That's just all what it boils down to. And I think as humans, we have such a hard time with it because, we live in a world that is so sensationalized, and it's so many temptations, and there's so many things out there for you to involve yourself in and experience. And the enemy makes us feel like we missing out if we not doing this and we not doing that. Oh, you young, you need to be, why not have sex? You young, why you not clubbing? Why you not doing this? Why you not doing that? But let's keep in mind something that my pastor constantly brings up. It's not just the old people that's dying. It's young people dying too. Sometimes more so than older people. And, if you are a believer, if you have grown up, under the word, you realize and recognize that you have to die and go somewhere for eternity. And that's either to heaven or hell. So is it worth you as a young person in your 20s, 30s, whatever y'all consider young this day and age, you know, you know, having that 20, 30 minutes of pleasure for you to, the next day, if you haven't repented and asked God's forgiveness, leave this earth and spend all eternity in hell. I mean, let's think about this. Eternity. There's no ending. It's forever. When we're on this earth, we're only here for what? Maybe if God blesses us with long life, 70, 80 years, 90 years, that's nothing. That's like milliseconds compared to eternity. And and all people, young people, old people, everybody really need to sit and just think about that. Think about this time on earth in reference to all eternity. I mean, there is no comparison. And I had to get to the point where I even put it into perspective, where I was like, God, nothing that this world can give me is worth me, as the scripture says, losing my soul, me dying and being completely separated from you forever, for all eternity, and burning in a tormenting hell for all eternity. No man, no situation, nothing. And you have to get to that point. And God will get you there. It may take longer for some people than others, but he'll get you there if you allow him to. But yeah, I had to come to that realization that nothing is worth it. Nothing is worth losing my soul. Nothing on this earth is worth it. And, and it took some time. And I thank God for his grace and his mercy for allowing me to even go through those times. So even when I had to suffer, that was grace and mercy, because he could have took me out of here. He could have took me out of here when I was in sin, when I had backslid, when I was shacking with a man or fornicating or doing whatever. He could have ended my life. Our lives are in the palm of his hands. The Bible lets us know we're like vapor. We're like a bubble on water. Here today, gone tomorrow. If it was his decision to do that, it would have been done. And that's why I thank him. I thank him for his grace and his mercy, for allowing me to go through some things, to learn my lesson, and giving me yet another chance to come back to him. And I just thank God for that. I just grateful for that. So, so even though, like I said, I had reconnected with that ministry, rededicated my life to Christ, I still wasn't where I need to be. I was still, involved with men, sexually, fornicating, doing things I wasn't supposed to do. But God already knew. He knew what it was gonna take. So it was some things, that happened in my life. I was in a couple of car accidents, it just things that happen. God will allow things to happen to shake us and to wake us up and to help us to see that your life is in my hands. While you're wasting time, living in sin, doing things that are contrary to my will, just remember that it's nobody but me that's allowing you to be here every day. It's nobody but me that's protecting and keeping you every day. So you need to think about that when you're making your life's decisions. Remember an accident, very vividly, where I was turning into my apartment complex in Greensboro, and like a dump truck rear-ended me, you know. And thank God, like moments before, my brother-in-law had gotten my daughter out the back seat and put her in the car with him. You know, that was nobody but God. You know, number one, because I could have died myself, but just think if she had a still been in the back seat and that dump truck had a rear end in my little small car, you know, I mean, she could have been gone. But God knows what to do. God will put people in certain places, to provide, you know, certain resources and ways of escape and certain situations. But He also knows what to do to get us to a point where we wake up and we see that God is not playing. And a lot of people think God is playing, but He is not playing. He is not playing with us. He is serious. You know, I know people hear it and say it all the time that we are living in the last days, and that is the truth. That's the God honest truth. And whether people believe it or not, that's on them. But I know it. I know it. I believe it. I see the signs of the times. And, and God will let us know, that He is not playing and that He is serious. He will allow things to come in our lives to shake us, like I said, and to try to wake us up. So I had, like I said, a couple of accidents. I had some other situations that occurred that, just looking back, I know it was nobody but God trying to get my attention, trying to let me know that it's time. You had enough chances to get it together. It's time for you to surrender to me, walk in your calling, and do what I expect you to do. But still then, hard-headed, okay? Still going the way that Crystal wanted to go. So, after that, back in Tarboro, working back and forth, relationships, bad decisions, etc. But I had my moments where when I was not interacting with a man, when I wasn't dealing with a man, I was really focused on God. Really focused on God. But one thing that I've learned about the enemy, he is on his job. Okay. He is on his job, and he knows that God has something great for me, and he knows that God has something for me to do. And every time I would get focused on God, like really deeply focused on Him, He would always somehow, I would meet up with a new guy, somebody that I was really attracted to, somebody that I really liked, and then there goes that. It was a distraction. It was like he was able to use these relationships that I wound up in just as a distraction, to take my mind off God, to take my focus off Him, where, I was back dibbling and dabbling in sin again, not doing what I was supposed to do fully for the Lord. And that just, pushed me back versus me going forward. I was steadily going back, because that's what the enemy wants. He doesn't want us to reach our destiny in God. He doesn't want us to accomplish what God has for us, because He knows that a lot of times throughout our journey that we will draw others to Christ. And he doesn't want people to be saved. He doesn't want people to be redeemed and to build a relationship with Jesus Christ. He wants you to stay in your mess, stay in your sin, so that when you die, you can be in the lake of fire with Him. That's what He wants. But I thank God for my praying mother and my aunts and uncles and family, people praying for me, my sisters praying for me, my leaders, my spiritual leaders praying for me, my pastor interceded for me, because I know that, it was nobody but them and just the grace of God that kept me and kept me where I could get back. Because when you backslide, it's hard to come back. It's hard to get back, because number one, you feel ashamed, especially when you are associated with like your home church and you backslid and people know that you've gone back out in the world. You feel ashamed. You feel like you've let your pastor down. You feel like you let your family and your church family down. And one thing I will say to anyone out there that has backslid, do not stay away from church. If you have backslid, you need to keep coming to church. You need to keep coming to church. You need to keep coming and sitting under the Word of God, because that is what is going to bring you back to a place where you realize and recognize that you're nothing without him. If you stay away from church, if you backslid and you stay away from church, that's just giving the enemy more of a pull on you. That's just giving the enemy more power over you, because you're not sending them the word, you're not getting the word, you know, you're not, around and assembling yourself with the people of God, with prayer and just intercession and being in God's presence. You need to be in church. So I say that to anybody out there that's watching that has backslid. Don't stay away. Who cares if somebody got something to say? Who cares if somebody is talking about you? Oh, she went back out. She was doing this, she was doing that. In the end, all that matters is that you reconcile with God. Let people talk. Let people say what they want to say. If you backslid and you haven't been in church in a while, out of respect, have a conversation with whoever your spiritual leader is, whoever your pastor is, and just letting them know, I want to come back, so they'll know that you haven't just completely, disconnected yourself from the ministry. But don't worry about what other people say. Go back to church, because I had those moments. Where, I was in sin, dealing with men, etc. And I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to go to church because I felt convicted. I felt ashamed. I felt like everybody could look at me and see that, I was doing something that was wrong. And, I had to get over those things, because I thank God for me being brought up in church. I realized and recognized that that's where my strength was. My strength was me being in church. And then thank God that I was in a ministry where I had spiritual leaders that would tell me, God is not pleased with your lifestyle. And see, people don't like that. People don't like for people to call them on their stuff. Okay, let's just be honest. We don't want anybody to tell us that, you need to stop what you're doing, especially if it's something I'm enjoying, especially if it's something that I like to do. I don't want anybody to tell me to stop fornicating. I don't want to hear that. And that's why a lot of people will go to churches where just pleasant things are being taught, pleasant things are being preached, like prosperity and happiness and joy and all these wonderful things. God will never leave you and forsake you. Yes, that is true. All of those things are true, but you also need the hard, gritty, real deal truth, because that's what's going to help you to get saved and stay saved. And that's going to help you to withstand temptation and withstand the wiles of the enemy. Sitting under that hard, true word. And I thank God for that hard, true word. And I thank God that He allowed me to get back to it. Because I had those moments. I had those moments where, when I was in sin, knew I was wrong, knew I was doing wrong, I would wake up and just would feel this weight on me. I did not want to go into the house of the Lord. And that was the worst thing to do, was to stay home, because that's just giving the enemy an opportunity to really talk to your mind, to really, influence you and get you to do things, even more things that you're not supposed to do. So if you are in a backsliding state, don't let the enemy win. Get up, go to church, go to your pastor, talk to someone on your ministerial staff, and just get reconnected, because that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take to defeat the enemy. Okay. So I'm going to pause right there for tonight, because this has been a long video. So going into part 3 of my testimony, which that will probably take the whole video, I will be talking about the relationship I got into probably around this time of, trying to, on the fence, feeling convicted here and there, and wound up married. Wound up married, and it was an interesting experience. And it was a marriage that ended. I am divorced, so definitely gonna delve into that in the next video, because marriage is definitely ordained by God. It's a wonderful thing, when you are with the person that God has chosen for you. I believe that it's a wonderful thing when you are with the person that God has chosen for you and that He has ordained for you. But when you are not, it is a whirlwind situation. And I know some of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to end my testimony part 2 right here. I know it was kind of long, but I've had a very interesting life. I've gone through a lot of different things, but I thank God for it because I just really feel like He's gonna use it to bless someone else, and I'm hoping and praying that what I've said on this video tonight has been a blessing. But I look forward to part 3 of my testimony, and everyone just continue to seek God, continue to spend time with Him, worship Him. He deserves all of our praise. He's an awesome God. I know it's a lot going on right now with this pandemic and the election coming up, and you know, it just seems like just the world is just spinning out of control. But that's why it's important to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is our peace. He's our covering. He's our protection. He just provides everything that we need. He's the source. And I encourage all of you out there to stay close to God, to continue to deepen your relationship with Jesus Christ, and just wait this thing out and see how God is going to move, because in the end He is the one that's going to make the ultimate decision. So God bless you all. I hope you all continue to be safe, and as always, continue to let God have His way. Take care.